Ash Wednesday, a day of prayer and fasting. This video is going to focus on prayer. If you haven't already, make sure you've watched the first video just kind of explaining the vision for the whole day this year. But this video is going to be specifically about prayer. What does it look like to have a day committed to prayer? We have lots of different people very committed to praying as part of our church here at Bethel. But I wanted to talk with you about what does it look like for you? How do you want to join us in praying today? Daniel in chapter 9 says this after he's gone through this incredible experience of discerning what God is doing and understanding in his moment in time in Babylon. He says this in verse 3, "So I turned to the Lord God and pleaded with him in prayer and petition and fasting and in sackcloth and ashes." And he's moved by the Spirit to unite himself with God's intentions, God's will, God's plans. And one of the things that I think that Daniel definitely exemplifies for us as we think about prayer is this act of listening before speaking. Oftentimes we rush and we think prayer is, I just need to get my words out of what I need to say or what I need to thank God for or what I need to ask him for. But really the first step probably actually is this posture of listening, of acknowledging who God is and waiting for him to speak. There's a quote by Soren Kierkegaard that I thought was really helpful as I was thinking about this. Soren Kierkegaard once observed, "A man prayed, and at first he thought that prayer was talking. But he became more and more quiet until in the end he realized that prayer is listening." So one of the things I would invite you to today is to not make prayer about all the things you necessarily want to ask God for, but to actually create some space in your life to listen. What does it look like to remove the distractions, to remove the things that make it difficult for you to focus and reflect on what God's doing in your life? And then after you create that space of listening, what are you going to say? What do you actually want to ask God for? You know, I think about this in the sense, this is the intercession movement, this movement of outside of myself, outward, if that makes sense, asking God, what are you going to do? And oftentimes prayer is actually saying back to God the things he's already said over us. You know, a lot of times I've noticed in this year that we seek authority and comfort in all kinds of ways. You know, and it's easy to rely on these systems of power to support us, but it doesn't matter as much what type of institutions you're a part of, but rather, do you find your authority and power in Jesus? So prayer is listening, and prayer is asking. It's about seeking God's presence. And I found myself in my heart really seeking God's presence, realizing that I don't really know where to turn to, and I desperately need to hear his voice. And there are things going on in my life, in the life of our church, our city, that we are not enough for, and we truly need God to intervene. So what does it look like to pray those prayers? And perhaps you could actually take on a practice of this day, however you are able to join, of writing down the things the Lord lays on your heart, things that you feel led to lean into and pray. And maybe it's not just for this day, but it's for this year. It could be for your spouse. It could be for your family. It could be for a friend, a beloved friend in your church, or someone that you actually in your heart are working towards forgiving. You know, these prayer, entering into these close spaces of prayer with God, they lead us towards caring for others and living this life that we feel very much called to. And I believe that God uses it to transform the desires of our heart. So how do you want to pray on Ash Wednesday this day? There's going to be these times to pray throughout the whole day alone, but also with others on Zoom in the morning and noon. What are the prayers that you will be saying, and will you be listening? Join us.